Hello again. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Tech York. Welcome to the last event of 2025 for Tech York. Has anyone been to any Tech York event before? Okay, a few people. Is anyone here for the first time? Oh, wow. Amazing. So good to have you all. Thank you very much for coming. So I don't know if you know, but it's actually like 3 years for this Tech York iteration, and I am a co-founder of Tech York together with Ben over there, the gentleman who's going to make photos and videos of you. So if you don't want to be on photos or videos, I have bad news for you. You're going to end up anyhow. But anyway, like if anyone like seriously doesn't want to do it, just raise your hand. Ben will remember you, and he will launch your AI to just make sure that it follows you all the time. But yeah, so it is actually 3 years for Tech York, which is insane for me, because when I just arrived to York back in 2022, and I tried to meet some people, and to do that, I decided, okay, why don't we just organize a meetup and just get people together? I didn't think it's gonna be, this serious, and we're gonna be here still after 3 years. And I couldn't be happier to see that this year for Tech York was actually like a real step up. I think like we are getting, becoming a more kind of mature, more serious, more independent organization and community, which is amazing. And this couldn't happen without the amazing people that are Tech York, because I think Tech York is a community, so Tech York is people. And I wanted to also mention that this year in Tech York, we actually even got a group of Tech York leadership team. So it's not just Ben and I anymore. We have a full group of people, and amazing. So I want to say a lot of thanks today. And do we have any Americans in the room? Any Americans? Oh, so Thanksgiving is tomorrow. So it's, last year we failed with the dates, and we actually had an event on the Thanksgiving. And that's a completely different story. But this year we're good. Thanksgiving is tomorrow. It's a free night. But I still want to say a lot of thanks to everyone. And first of all, I want to thank to everyone, like all the visitors, because you are the community. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. I do want to say a huge thank you to everyone in the tech leadership group, right? And except for Ben and I, we have Terry and Rachel. We have Alex somewhere here in the room. We have Louise in the room. We don't have Chris in the room, and we don't have Richard Hunt in the room. But trust me, they do so much work for us. And I am, as some of you know, I don't have a lot of sleep lately. So my memory might be not the best, so I haven't forgot anyone, yeah? I'm good. Okay, if I have, please let me know. But thank you very much for that. And also this year was actually also a step up for us, because we got a few supporters, a few people and organizations that helped us like materially, some with money, some with something like material that we needed. And I wanted to thank as well, first of all, to Merchants Adventurers Hall and Merchants Adventurers Guild, because they are amazing and they are supporting us with this venue. The discount they give us is probably cost like half of the annual budget for Tech York, and it is amazing to have that. And I absolutely love being here. It's the third time Tech York in this guild, in this hall, and as a person who likes Middle Ages, it's just so special. It feels so special to me. I also want to say thank you to Patch, who gave us a lot of free spots for hosting events there. I also want to say thank you to AEB Presents, who was supporting us. If anyone got to an event at Tech York and had some free food, I was one. Yeah, a couple people. Yeah, so that was AEB Presents. We have way better events now. And then also I want to say thank you to Richard Hunt, who supported us in this area as well, and definitely to Eagle Labs and Chris from Eagle Labs, because Eagle Labs supporting us a lot, and I will say a little bit about them later. But even the drinks today, they are covered by them. So those are the organizations and people that I wanted to thank a lot. And I want to say a few words on behalf of two organizations here that, we don't have Ashley here. No Ashley. Yeah, so has anyone heard about York Angels? I see a few people who have, but they don't raise their hands. If they know, they know. So yes, York Angels is a group of angel investors in York. It's a relatively young angels network, but it is doing amazingly well. With the group, I am a member as well, so I'm talking on behalf of them. It was founded by Sam and Ashley, Sam Hills and Ashley Mason. They're both actually members of Merchants Guild. And what they do is essentially helping startups in York and that are connected to York with some advice and with some angel investment early on so that they can get from where they are to where they want to be. And I strongly encourage everyone to research that. If you're a startup, reach out to them, send them your pitch. You will definitely get feedback and very good advice. If you are in a position to be an angel investor, if you are curious to do that and be, let's say, just passive investor, invest a little bit of money and look with the group, that's amazing. If you are also interested to be like very active and invest a little bit of money or a lot of money and also be very active with the startup, it also works very good. So one of our members is already a chairman of board of directors of one of the startups. So it kind of works for everyone. And I strongly encourage you to do this because I think, again, I work in tech, I'm coming from tech, and I know how important it is to have some funding available for very early kind of businesses. And having York Angels is a huge enabler for the whole kind of Tech York ecosystem. And I'm sure that's in a decade, we will not recognize what's happening here tech-wise. So that's York Angels, right? And I also want to say a few words on behalf of Eagle Labs. Have anyone heard about Barclays Eagle Labs? Yes, so Eagle Labs is amazing, and Chris is even more amazing, who is running Eagle Labs here in York. And they have an office in the Guildhall, right? They have an office in the Guildhall, and they're doing an amazing job supporting local businesses, supporting local communities, who we are as well. And you should check them out. You should become a member. Like members of Eagle Labs, you get at least like £5,000 worth of benefits in software subscriptions, in accounting, in legal fees that you like pay anyhow. So definitely check it out. It's very worthwhile to do. And if you don't have a Barclays business account and you run a business, shame on you. So those are the two firms that I wanted to, the two organizations that I wanted to say on behalf on. And one last thing that I say before I'm actually getting to the interesting part of the event is a sponsorship slot. And sponsorship slot today goes to me and my company, Boost Workforce. So this is the company I run for. I run software consultancy agencies for over 13 years now. And Boost Workforce, at the moment, we specialize in AI deployments and HubSpot CRM integrations, implementations, and customization. So if you are in sales, marketing, go-to-market teams, and you use some CRM, first of all, if it's not HubSpot, buy HubSpot from me. If it is HubSpot and you want to take, all out of it, talk to me. I sit in the office with them, so I can kind of, make them do everything for you. And yeah, it's pretty cool. It has a lot of stuff with AI, and they're getting better with AI. Actually, it's kind of actionable just because they have ability to use unstructured data in CRM, and their competitors can't do that right now. So that's what I do. So please, if you need anything around that, talk to me as well. It helps me, and I help Tech York to exist. So that was it for everything I wanted to tell today. Thank you very much for listening to me. And now, finally, we're getting there. So apparently, we have a good tradition in Tech York that for the final event of the year, we get to the most amazing venue in the city. I'm sorry for any other event people who are here, but this is, I think, that's the best venue in the city. And we are having someone from at least a £10 billion company as a keynote speaker, right? And today is like a continuation of this tradition, right? And we will have an amazing person from York that is an author, that is that is a founder of a successful tech company, that he founded a company and sold the company, and now he is working as a low carbon director at this very recognizable brand called Octopus Energy. Please welcome Jim Bennett.
So welcome. Thank you, Sir Guy. Yeah, there's quite a bit. This thing's split really into two halves. It starts with me in a bathing suit, and it ends with me working for Octopus, and it's got everything in between. So it's basically a cathartic experience for me to talk about the last 30 years in business. But the key thing I wanted to cover off is, one, later on I'm going to cover what's the secret sauce of Octopus. What is it that they've done that's made them so successful? It's probably about half the presentation. And then the first part is about what did I do pre-Octopus, which did involve a tech business in York, which is fantastic. So thank you for all coming out on this night, this rainy night. All the merch needs to go. It's failure if I take any of it home. So there will be some audience participation where you can indeed get yourself a bit of merch, and the umbrellas are definitely worth having, I would have thought, on a night like tonight. So, here we go, keep going. So, they are some of the companies that I've worked for, and without further ado, we're going to crack on, but we're going to start with the formative years and the vibe. So, I work now in Octopus, where the average age of my team, I had 400 guys working for me, the average age is about 24, and they have this mythical thing called the vibe. We might know it as morale or energy, call it what you will, but you've got to try and get people up for it, okay? So for all the introverts in the room, I'm really, really sorry. But what I'm going to ask you to do is, I'm going to make you stand up, and there is a prize, by the way, so whoever is the best one, which is judged by my middle daughter, she's my favourite middle daughter. Come on, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. And remember, this is called the vibe. And what you've got to do is, you've got to wave as though you're on a desert island and there's a plane going over and you're trying to get rescued. And remember, we'll do it 1, 2, 3, and then we'll go. And I know you introverts, you're hating all this, so it is what it is. But the winner, the best one who's voted for by my daughter, will get a plushie. So you ready? 1, so you're waving like you're going to get rescued. 1, 2, 3. Corey, what's the answer?
Who is singing as well?
Who are we liking?
I think the lady at the front in the white t-shirt.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I did think you were very enthusiastic too, so there you go. So you get a second prize. So, what is this mythical vibe all about? Well, hopefully now you've seen that you've probably got the measure for what this presentation is going to be like. It's not going to be that too serious, but we have guys who are coming in and they're basically doing 20, 30 calls a day. They're either selling heat pumps, they're selling solar panels, and trying to be as enthusiastic on your 20th call of the day is pretty tricky. So therefore, you've got to get the vibe up. And so what we found is using lots of different techniques to get that energy going. And it's more than just the energy, it's the vibe, whatever that means. You might even be vibing, is what it's all about. But let's go to the next one, the formative years. Yes, that's me on Scarborough Beach, circa 1974. I've still got that belly. And I was born in Middlesbrough, just a goal kick from the old Ayresome Park. First 7 years I lived in Redcar, then I moved to Redcar, as it's known for anyone from Teesside, and then moved to Saltburn by the Sea. So that was me. A couple of things worth noting. I have no embarrassment gene, which has really stood me well in business. And the reason being is, my parents were evangelical Christians. So when I was walking home from school, I'd be walking past the supermarket, my dad's on the guitar, my mum's singing, God's not dead. No, he is alive. And I'd be clapping, and as I'm walking past my friends, absolutely zero embarrassment gene. And while I was putting this together, I do think that stood me in tremendous stead, because I will go and talk to anybody, I will go and do anything and put myself out there. But the first lesson of the night was work smarter, not harder, taking a step back. So I've always had jobs. I started out doing paper rounds. And the first thing that I learned on doing the paper rounds was, it was about the tech. So I started doing the round, which was the furthest away from the news agents. It used to take me 90 minutes. I used to walk up there, walk back. Then I noticed that somebody had a racing bike. And they had the racing bike, put the satchel on, and away they went. I go, that's cool. Then they got panniers. So you could actually put all of the papers in order in either side of your pannier, so therefore they're in the right order. And if you're doing the Sunday round, which was the big, heavy papers, you had one of those trolleys, that you see people of a certain age walking along, and you put all of the kings in. And I looked at this and I thought, brilliant, I'll copy that, and I just copied it with glee. But then what happened was, I spotted a guy who had the round right next to the shop, and he lived on lived on the round itself. It took him 18 minutes to do his round. 18 minutes. I was taking 90 minutes, schlepping all the way to the far end of town, 18 minutes. And the second thing I found with him was he was getting 30 quid's worth of tips at Christmas. Now, to put this into context, you got 25 pence a round, okay? So you did around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then you did Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, so you got £2.50, and then you got 50p a round on a Sunday. 30 quid was a lot of money. To get into a Middlesbrough match at that time was £2, right? And he was getting, I'm like, how'd you do it? And do you know what he did? He went into the local Gateway, which doesn't exist anymore, it's now Sainsbury's, and he bought, you know, those really flimsy paper Christmas cards, the really flimsy ones, and he wrote to all his customers saying, from your newspaper boy, very best, and put it through the door. And as a result, the tips came flowing in, and I thought, what a great idea. And so there's something in here about, you know, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but steal with glee. When you see a really good idea, steal it. Yeah, pinch it. There's no wrong with stealing with glee. People tell you startup businesses, a lot of them, you just do what's currently out there, but it's better. It doesn't have to be unique. So I think that was the first thing that I learned. I think the second thing was around work ethic. A lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people who've run businesses and the like have got a lot of energy and they can sort of power through. And what happened was this guy, he said, oh, I'm binning this paper around, Lark. I'm going to go on the milk. Okay? Now, has anybody here been a milkman or milkwoman, milk person? Owen, at the back, fantastic. I tell you what, if you've worked on the milk, nothing's as hard as getting up at 5 o'clock when you're like 14. Yeah? But it was every other day, so it was only 4 mornings, and you got 8 quid. So you got double the money you got on the papers. So he left. I took over his paper round right next to the office, right next to the newsagents, which was brilliant. And then I moved, and he managed to get me a job on the milk. Now, the milk, interestingly, bearing in mind where I ended up, electric vehicles. Probably because it had to be quiet in the morning, maybe, but really weird that that was the only industry that had electric vehicles. But there you go. The fun part of that job was bombing along at 25 miles an hour. If you lean back when you jump off a milk float at 25 miles an hour with 4 bottles in each hand, one between each fingers, one between your thumb, like that, if you lean back far enough and run quick enough, you can make it work. So jumping off the thing, you'd have to run up and down. You basically ran for 5 or 6 miles every morning, and we did the milk stuff, but it was tremendously hard work. Even more hard work when we got a diesel truck, because those could go along at 40 miles an hour. And trust me, when you jump off a diesel truck at 40 miles an hour, you don't run along the road, you skid along the road, which happened quite often. And then another guy pointed out there was this thing called the pools and spot the ball. Younger members of the audience, you're going to have to Google it. Really weird. I went round people's houses on a Thursday evening for 3 hours. So I've gone from doing 15 paper rounds to 4 mornings on the milk to 3 hours on a Thursday, and I got 15 quid, right? And what you did was you went round, you clicked the pools coupons. It was basically betting on scores on the football, and collected it. And it was brilliant because you suddenly realised that you can only work so hard, right? There's only so many hours in the day. You may as well get paid as much as you can for those hours. And the analogy I would use in there is the bottle of water. You've probably heard the bottle of water. You go in a supermarket and a bottle of water costs 75p. You go in Pret and it costs £1.50. You go in LNER, my second home, and it's like 2 quid. You go on a plane and it's 3 quid, but it's the same thing. It's the same for each of us. We've got a lot of value, and it's who's going to give you the most value for it. And then the other thing I noticed was spot the ball. Absolutely bizarre concept. So what you did was, for the younger members, you cut out this thing out of the paper and you put a cross where you thought the football was. So they took the football, you can see here, look, these two jumping up, look. You'd put a cross above it. And then everyone submitted them. No AI in those days. It was clearly somebody just picked one out of the hat and chose it. And if you were doing your money at the end of the week, yeah, and it didn't quite tally, you just threw some of the spot the balls in the bin. Because they had no way of telling whether you'd won. If they'd done the footballs, you could tell whether they'd won or not, right? That's what some unscrupulous people did. I didn't do that. Anyway, it turns out you get notified when you're on the pools that if someone wins a load of money, they tell the person who's collecting it. Someone in my round won £30,000 on spot the ball. Bearing in mind, I could have thrown the paper in the bin, but I didn't. I submitted it. How much money do you think they gave me as a tip? £10? £10 would be good for a £15 round.
How many did you throw away?
I didn't throw any away. I didn't throw any. I was too honest. I just didn't dare do that. I thought someone would catch you out and that sort of thing. I've got that evangelical Christian thing running through me that thinks, you know, it can get it done. The answer is they gave me bugger all. And so I knocked on the door and said, "Oh, I hear you won £30,000. And they said, "Yeah, not a hint of guilt, nothing, not give me it." But like the Murphys, I'm not bitter. So then what happened was I went to university, and the theme on this page is do what you love, follow your passion. And I studied geography. It's surprising I got a job at all, but anyway, I studied geography, and I was really good at physical geography, not so good at human geography, but the field trip was Spanish desert or geography of the grape in Languedoc-Roussillon. So I switched courses just so I could go on the piss up in the south of France, which is what I did. But you've got to do what you love. And so I went round the whole round the milk round. And I do like a beer. I do like going out. I like partying. I like camaraderie. I like team spirit. And so I joined Bath, a brewery. What's not to love? They gave me an XR2i with blue trim. First ever car. Absolute gold. And wait for it. It had a car phone. A car phone. It had a phone in it, like a brick that went where the gear stick was, and you picked this massive thing, and you could ring people from your car. It was just like mind-blowing. And you got free beer. So they paid you in a free beer allowance. And if you have a look at the brands that they had, Carling Premiership, the Worthington Cup, the Tennent's Cup, the Stones Rugby League, what a time to be alive. Yeah? I was going to football, I was going to rugby, there was brand launches every night, you name it, it was just party central, it was the best. And they gave me 4 jobs. I started out in Birmingham, then I went to Bradford, working men's clubs, then I went to Glasgow, where I was selling beer up there, and then I also then did Teesside, Middlesbrough, which was like coming home. A few stories about some of that. I think, what did I learn? I've said follow your passion, you're a long time dead. I think one of the things you learn in the pub game is resilience. When you walk into a pub in the middle of the day, you've got daytime drinkers, right, and you're wearing a suit. Instantly, they say you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're the CID, you're the plod, whatever it is. Everyone in there is quite hostile towards you, and you have to sort of big yourself up to walk into these places to be able to get anything done. Second one was I was 21 years old in Bradford, and what beer companies do is they basically take a loan out against the property. So working men's club, they take the deeds. So it's called taking the deeds back off the property. And I had to go in on like my second day in Bradford Working Men's Club, Brown Royd Working Men's Club, and wait for it, foreclose on their business. You can imagine that, right? 21 years old, you walk in, and there was a big long table, and it's full of committee men. I'm not being sexist, it's committee men. You don't have committee women. In Bradford at that time, they still had clubs that didn't even let women in. Yeah, so there was a female rep who worked for a previous company. She had to do business through a window. I'm not making that up. I had to do business through the window. Anyway, you walk in, and they're all there. And the only reason they're on the committee is because you got a free pint. So I bought them all a free pint. And I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to have to tell them what it is. And at this point, this lad said, "I've got to stop you there, son." He said, "I've got warts that are older than you." And that was how he started. And I'm like, oh. So as a result, it was a really, really hard grounding in terms of working out, how to get business done. I once made a guy sell a parrot to pay his beer bill. That was one thing we did, which was quite entertaining because he was on cash on delivery and he didn't have enough money. And the guy said he'd pay 200 quid for the parrot. And so I took the 200 quid and he got his beer order. I thought it was solving problems, but whatever. But does anyone know which film that picture's from up the top there in the middle? You can see Rick Mayall in there as well, if you can look closely. Anyone know what it is? American Werewolf in London. You made me miss my shot where the 2 Americans walk in and the whole pub goes quiet. That's what it was like. Absolute carnage it was. You had to have resilience. You had to be massively curious. And the curious thing was, when you walked into a pub, your job was not to sell them beer, it was to make them money. So you had to go in and do an outlet check. I still do it to this day. I do it for businesses. And you have this sixth sense now about how businesses work. And this is what I sort of learned, is you need to know the basics. So you look at the car park, you look at the windows, you look at whether there's a load of fag butts outside the place, which in those days would have been inside the place. Just go with that for a second. You go in, is the guy behind the bar, is he drinking and smoking? Because you're not allowed to drink and smoke. Yeah. What's on the notice boards? Yeah. Is there a decent Yeah, what's the merchandising in there? What brands have they got on the bank? Because if you go first and last on the banks of beers, they're the ones that sell. So you put your high profit items. Next time you go in a pub and look where Guinness is placed, Guinness is always placed, because you make the most money off it, Guinness is always placed on the buy line. Yeah, the I line is buy line. So you go in and you do all these outlet checks, and you have to give them advice on is it wet lead, what they do in the jukeboxes and the pull machine, pools and jukeboxes and all that sort of stuff, and you have to advise them on how to make their pubs better. So essentially, I was going in and working out how to advise a business on being better. So I learned all those business basics, which was great. And then the third thing that I learned, I'll tell that story now, I think, is Elvis Presley. I didn't meet Elvis Presley. Has anybody seen the classic movie Rita, Sue and Bob 2? Yeah. Probably morally questionable in the current climate. However, it is what it is still quite amusing. That's set in a place called Buttershaw. And Buttershaw Lane Working Men's Club had a turnover of £2.5 million. And it was run by these same committee men who just wanted their free pint. £2.5 million. Anyway, on that occasion, we were giving the deeds back to them. Yep, so they paid all the money off over a period of time, and we're giving the deeds back. So it fell to me to invite all the senior managers of Bass North, so all the directors who had chauffeur-driven cars, by the way. They got driven around in chauffeur-driven cars. And I had to organise the entertainment. So I organised like a boy-girl duo. There was a magician. Yeah, there was a crooner, which was the Elvis Presley turn. Anyway, we get there. The entire club is rammed, and I mean absolutely rammed, wall to wall. Boy-girl duo comes on. I love you, you love me. It's all good. Everyone's enjoying themselves. By the way, totally free bar all evening, because that's the thing. When you give the deeds back, it's free beer for the entire night. So you can imagine what it was like. Then the magician came on, and I'm going, and where's this third fella? Where's this third act? Didn't turn up. What are we going to do? And I said, well, I can sing a bit. So on I went, and I kid you not, in front of all the directors of Bass North, I went on and did a complete medley of Elvis Presley songs. Just started. I won't do it now to spare your ears, but I can actually carry a tune. So I did the Elvis Presley thing. And then, and this is the last bit, the front, nobody knows what you do and don't know. I then went and ran a £50 million IT project. And the reason why I got the job was because it was for sales guys. Yeah? And wait for this. We use HubSpot massively, by the way, Sir Guy, at our place. We decided it'd be a real wizard wheeze to build our own CRM system. Not go and buy one, yeah? Build one completely from scratch, totally geared up for, I'll come on to this later, we're cracking, totally geared up for the beer market. So because I was a sales guy and knew the requirement, they wanted to put a business person in charge of it, but I had 50 IT people working for me, and I knew absolutely nothing about IT. But they didn't know that. And so as a result, we built this CRM system. There was another very nice piece that came along. There was a support function for that IT system, and basically the person who's in charge of that IT system, their entire job was to say to the sales guys, no, you can't have that requirement. And she's now my wife. So I met my wife. So she was working on the other side of it, and she had to do all the support piece. I was doing the IT piece. But that's how I got into tech. And then the other bit that I'd chuck in there is around innovation. Basically, we came up with sort of good ideas of new products. We tried a cannabis beer, probably a little bit ahead of its time. But we also brought out a beer that had guarana and damiana in, which is the same stuff as Red Bull, but it wasn't fizzy, so you could neck it in one, which was good. And that thing there, Rocket Man. We did one in football grounds, actually. You know where you go in and they do 20 pints all at once? That was us. And then we did Rocket Man, which is beer on your back, walking around a sports venue doing that and that sort of stuff. But again, you can start to see how some of the ingredients of the future are sort of coming together, but the big IT. But the killer bit on the IT bit for me was, it was the innovation bit, actually. We had an advisor come in, and the advisor came in and interviewed all of us and then wrote a report about what the future trajectory of the business should be for this innovation team. And I sat in this room, and basically I said, I said that. I said that. I said that. Classic consultancy came and interviewed everyone, stuck it in a report, and just came back and said, that's what we can do. And I went, and I felt really hurt and cheated that they'd taken my ideas and passed them off as their own. And then, like any good person should do when you see something that's not quite right, you think, how can I spin it to my advantage? And the answer is, if you can't beat them, join them. So I then went and put we're going back in time. It sounds like I'm ancient. I probably am, but there you go. The only way you got a decent job was Sunday Times, right? Again, for the younger people in the room. So it was a large supplement in the Sunday Times, had all the job adverts in, and that was where you got your executive jobs. There was no online stuff, it was just executive jobs. And anyway, I saw this job, and it was a really weird advert. And Rona said to me, she said, you should really go for that. And I'm really loyal. And like somebody once said, I'm really good at making a bad plan work. Okay, so I stick at stuff and I persevere, but we'll come on to that in a minute. And basically, I applied. I didn't want to leave BAS, but it was going to double my salary. I was going from 35 grand to 70 grand. And I was thinking, 70 grand, it was like I won the lottery. I was like, woo! I was 28, 29. And so I joined this company called Boxwood. They used to be called Praxis, based in Leeds, and they were a little bit way and a little bit woe, is how I would describe them. So to give you a couple of examples, they said to me, what do you know about organizational design? And I went, well, absolutely nothing. They said, we want you to go on the ops board of Sainsbury's as an organizational design expert and reorganize all of their stores. 150 stores and reorganize them. I went, yeah, fair enough. I'll do it. I wonder, sitting there, all these gnarly retailers who've been running stores since, the year dot, absolutely know what it is. But before I went in, I went and did a night shift in a store in Horsham. I went and worked in a petrol kiosk. I went and did a grocery manager job. I did a bakery job. I did the fresh job and produce job. And as a result, I had enough knowledge to be able to make it work. And there was a feeling that we were all in it together. Yeah, so I had a little bit of credibility, if you like. And what I decided to do was we came up with this thing to save. It was 17 million quid we were going to save. And some of it was dead simple stuff, like the guy who works in the petrol station had to be a deputy manager because of the amount of cash that they dealt with. Again, cash, money, didn't have the credit cards in these days. So all we did is we put those funny little tubes in where you fire the cash up in the thing, and therefore you didn't need a deputy manager. We'd saved them 15 grand. So on that role. But the killer one was, I did the classic consultancy thing. I said to the guys in store, I said, I'm doing the reorg. And they went, oh, not another reorg. Because they got reorged to death. Yeah, they were constantly getting reorged in terms of what they're going to do. And I was chatting to a guy in Rotherham, and I said to him, how do you think you should do it? He said, just leave it to us, we'll make it work. And I went, what do you mean? And he went, well, tell us what the target operating model is, and over a year, we'll manage towards it. When somebody leaves, I'll get rid of that role, promote somebody up, move them in, and therefore it's not a big bang, and we're in charge of the reorg. Anyway, I was carried around in a shield at the head office because they thought this was wizard wheeze. They still got the savings within a year. And then, I then went out on the shop floor and did some stuff. Anybody know who invented the huddle at Celtic? Tony Mowbray, indeed, who is my favourite footballer from Middlesbrough. But a couple of things on this. So what we did was, on the shop floor, we came up with customer obsession workshops, working groups. So you'd get the staff together into a little huddle each morning. You'd say to them, what's broken in the store? How do you fix it? And they would come up with ideas. And the beauty was the ideas they came up with were all executable because they've thought about how to implement them and whether it'd work or not work. And as a result of which, one of the things we came up with was this thing, price of a hemorrhoid cream on aisle 7, where they shout down the thing or there's a spillage on line 7. We brought in the mics so that you had somebody who could handle the whole of the shop on the mic, so therefore you didn't have to shout down. I think they probably need to bring them in for the speedy tills that they have now, because the amount of times I've stood there waiting to take a bottle off, I'm probably oversharing, of the bottle of spirits that I've got, you're waiting for it. But the only reason I mention that is it really works. As a hint and tip to get people to do stuff, get people in your team to say to them, whether it's a sales process, whether it's a tech process, basically get them together and say, what can we do to fix it? And there's this little process that we've got, and I'll share that when I share the slides at the end. I'll also share you this, which is a guide on how to run these little huddles. And basically, you need 5 minutes. You come up with whatever the topic is, what's the process we're trying to fix. 2 minutes, they get flip chart, whatever they're called, post-it notes, and they write on it what the answers are. They just write in multiple ones. Then you put them all down on a table, and then you vote for them. You get 3 votes each. You vote for them, which one's the best. And the one that gets the most votes, whoever wrote it, gets to implement it. And it's absolute gold for getting people to move and get them to change because they feel like they're doing it for themselves. It'll be implementable. Absolute gold. It's really the whole consulting business model down into a little model. But I mentioned a little bit way and a little bit woe. The way that they won work was, I would get on the train, the 6 o'clock special. I would head down to Coach M to have some nice kippers, because half of Coach M was kippers and the main breakfast that Ellen and I used to do. The other half was smokers, but there was no, it was just, half was smokers, half of this used to go in there with your pipe, didn't you, Dick? Anyway, but smoking and kippers, and you get on at 6 o'clock, down to London. You'd go in and see the customer at, say, 9 o'clock and meet them, the director. They'd say what the problem was, and there'd be 6 of us. You'd then go out and go and interview people around the stores, as it was in this case for Sainsbury's, and then, wait for it, you didn't go to bed, and you met them the following morning at 9 o'clock. So you haven't been to bed at all, you've been up for 24 hours, yeah? And you went in, and the mechanism for playing back was a thing called a study, which was, imagine an A4 piece of paper with sort of crisscross lines on it, like sort of, anyway, whatever it is. And basically, you sellotaped them all together and you used letraset. Anyone know what letraset is? Anyway, you built graphs with red and green letraset and built graphs all by hand. You drew pictures, you wrote stuff down, you put quotes in from customers. And this thing, you put it on the floor and you laid it out like a story. And it opened out because it was sellotape on the hinges. And you rolled it out on the floor. And you walked the customer all the way around it. And at the end of it, they just went, how have you managed to achieve this in 24 hours? If you can do this in 24 hours, imagine what you could do in a year. And that's what we did. And so a couple of things worth noting about that. I've said the teams have the answer and make it work. Follow the money, quantifies the juice versus the squeeze. So we do that. I didn't know who this bloke was. I've got to tell you that. I knew roughly who he was. Anyone know who he is? Martin Johnson, right? So this company was a little bit way and a little bit woe. We went into the CEO of Sainsbury's, and we knew he was a rugby fan, and we were pitching for the next piece of work. We hired Martin Johnson, and Martin Johnson came in and did the pitch. And this guy, who was other side of his desk, literally just sat there and just went, it's Martin Johnson. And he said these words, and I remember it, he said, you've got the work, can I just talk to Martin? And for about 40 minutes, he just talked to Martin. Then Martin, who'd prepped the slides, actually went through some of the slides to show that he'd actually done his homework about Sainsbury's, and we won the work. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's something that stuck in my mind's eye. But anyway, that was that. The next bit of all of this was quantifying is the juice versus squeeze, follow the money. So again, you can do this in any business, but you've got to follow the money. You've got to make sure that what you're doing is actually making a profit, or is actually, meeting your end goal. So what we would do is we get these little tiger teams together and go into the store, and we would try to take cost out of products. Okay? So imagine a tomato sauce bottle. Yeah, it's got 3 colours on the tomato sauce bottle. This is own brand tomato sauce, because you're not going to go and tell Heinz to take a colour off their bottle. But 3 colours on their tomato sauce bottle, and we'd say, do you really need 3 colours? And they go, what do you mean? Well, you've got green, red, because they're trying to make it look like Heinz. Couldn't you just get away with white and red on your tomato sauce bottle? And they go, yeah, probably. But how much money is that going to save us? And we'd say, well, it'd save you about 0.021p per bottle. And if you add that up, it's about 600 grand a year. Yeah, I'll have a bit of that. And so if you look at this example here, Kleenex versus the own brand, that's got about 7 or 8 colours on it. That's only got 3. So that would be one example. Another one was cigarettes. Cigarettes, you don't pay duty on them while they're in a bonded warehouse. So what we would do is we'd get just-in-time management on cigarettes. They used to keep cigarettes stacked up at the back of the store because they were light and easy to move, quite bulky, but easy to move. And we said, don't do that anymore. You're paying too much duty, only bring them in when you need to. We brought in this, milk and eggs coming in on trolleys. Yeah, so we did a study on that and said, what happens with eggs? Well, we keep breaking a lot of eggs. Why is that? Because you get them in cardboard packaging, you have to carry them across. If you have them on trolleys straight out the back of the wagon into the stores, you can save some money. Ladies' tights. So you'd buy a product and you'd all sit round and look at the product and say, how can we take some cost out of this? The tights, we didn't touch the tights, they were fine. But the piece of board that the tights were wrapped around had silver gloss on either side. Yet, you couldn't actually see the board because the tights were around it. And so we said, so why are you paying all that for that? Oh yeah, we'll get rid of it. Bags for, my two favourite stories. One, we went to a factory, and because Sainsbury's were really tight on their supply chain, you had to fill bottles to something like, I'm making this up, I don't know, but it was something like 0.1% over whatever the fill level was. And they did it because they never wanted to be sued by their customer. And so what we did was we said, yeah, but how accurate is that machine? And they said, well, it's calibrated so that you can do it to the exact volume and it'll always be the exact volume. And that one saved something like £2.5 million. But my favourite one, we went to visit two guys who did nothing but, you know the plastic bags that you have for vegetables? Yeah? They provided those. And I wandered into this room and they literally looked like someone who'd been caught carrying out a crime. Because what we did, by the way, when we saved money on doing those bottles, half of it would go to the manufacturer who's making the own brand and half would go to Sainsbury's. So there was a reason to let us in, if you see what I mean. But I went in and they just literally just went, oh. I've been onto Company's House and found all the companies that provided plastic bags for vegetables. Yeah, and there's like 3 in the country. And I looked how much money they were making. And this company was ludicrously profitable, 2 guys, and they saw how much dividend they were paying themselves, and the other 2 were paying much less. They had done a deal with Sainsbury's to sell the bags for 3 times the price of the competition, but because no one had bothered their ass to go and negotiate the contract, because it's plastic bags and who cares, and they literally went, oh, and they said, we'll give you the same deal as everybody else, and instantly we saved them a boatload of money. Anyway, it was fascinating, but I've done lots of stuff. But the bit that I thought was most interesting on reflecting on some of this stuff, on the consulting stuff, was motivation and passion. Can you incentivize a team to be high performing? I'll come on to a higher purpose, which I think is the just one thing, you know, that mission, that higher purpose. That's really what makes a team high performing. But when I worked for that company, if you were billing, you got paid 70 grand. If you weren't billing, you got paid 35 grand. So they count how many days you'd billed that month, yeah? And luckily, I was permanently engaged. And so basically, there was a massive incentive to get out there and bill because you got 70 grand instead of 35 grand. And then the second one was that if you did a certain number of days in the month, the following month, you got every Friday off. Now, I said they're a bit way and a bit woe. Some of these things I'm sure wouldn't pass any HR tests these days. However, that's what they did. And trust me, you went out and won the next piece of work. You didn't wait for your boss to go and win the next piece of work. You won the next follow-on. You went and got it. You sought it out. You captured it. You brought it in because you wanted to be billing. And the idea of getting a Friday off was absolute gold. It turns out, and I only found this out when I left, I was the only one who actually got the Fridays off. Nobody else got it or managed to do it. Right, where are we going next? Okay, so you've got to remember the why. Yeah, you've got to remember the why. And I've been talking about different teams that I've worked in. This is the team, and this is the family Bennett. So one of the things I did after I'd worked for that consultancy company, because I'm tight, we saved all the money, because my salary had doubled. We just put it away and saved it and said, right, let's go traveling around the world for a year. So Abby, where's Abby? Give us a wave, Abby, who's now 27. She was 3 at the time. We went traveling around the world as a family. There was only me, Rona, and Abby at that point. And we went to India for 3 months. And this is where I'll use my first visual aids. I think saying I'm an author is a bit of a stretch, as this has sold 31 copies. There's more people been on the moon than read my book. I am going to say it, and it does sound very cruel, but even members of my family who are in the book haven't read it. That's all I'll say. But 19 years later, after the trip, I wrote it, and we went to India, we went around Southeast Asia, went to Sumatra. That's a picture of Abby in Sumatra. To this day, I still can't believe that some of the things that we did. We had a very laissez-faire attitude. There was a waterfall, and we put armbands on her, and the local kids put her in at the top of the waterfall. She went down the waterfall, pulled her out, ran round, put her in at the top, and we're sat in a bar just drinking, watching all this, thinking we're great parents. We went to Sumatra, Java, Lombok, Bali. We went to Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, Mexico, Cuba, and America. But it's amazing. But travel is definitely one of my passions and something that we followed. That's Turkey, bottom left. That's surfing down a volcano in Nicaragua. That is supposed to be, I've taken a bit of poetic license here. These are all my family, by the way. I haven't taken that much poetic license. That is supposed to be Canada, but it's not. It's Iceland. Anyone been to Petra in Jordan? Just the one? Oh, yeah, clearly you have. Best place in the world ever. We've travelled massively wide. It's absolutely phenomenal. That big library, the Nabatean culture, what they don't tell you is there's a full Roman city behind it. complete with all the columns and the Colosseum and all that stuff, and a load more of these Nabatean ruins. Absolutely phenomenal. That's Angkor Wat. That's Abbey panning for gold in New Zealand. That one, that's us in Sri Lanka. It was in the middle of a big storm. I'm not sure the wisdom of wearing a pan on your head is a good thing to do. But that one particularly makes me laugh. So I am notoriously tight, and we got to a place in New Zealand where you could go skiing, and I didn't ski at that time, and I saw how much it cost, and I thought, I'm not going to go at that. So what I did was I went to an op shop and bought a suitcase, ripped the suitcase in half and went sledging, which was a wizard wheeze right up into the point where the cardboard that it was made out of left a massive orange skid stain all the way down the mountain, and the people in the ski resort came out and told us off, but it is what it is. But look, the reason for putting this in is there's lots of teams I've worked with, both at work and outside, but you've got to remember the why, and that is the team. We'll be on to Octopus in a minute. Now for the Tech York bit. It's great to see Dick here, who's the whole of Mood was his brainchild, along with a couple of others. Now then, what did we learn here about teams? You can read bullet point number 1 yourself. You've got to think big. And you can see how some of the things I've done in the past build up to this. So let's have a go at that. We went into Shell and BP and said, we can build you an upstream project management system for your upstream oil and gas portfolio. They had BP had 60 billion under management and 110 for Shell. We knew nothing about oil and gas, absolutely nothing. And we went in and built all these nice visualizations for the senior team and said, wouldn't it be great if you could move this bubble and it got bigger and changed color? And they went, yeah, I want one of those. And then we built it. And we did the classic software thing of going in and using PowerPoint and other tools at the time to mock up the screens, yeah, and then had to engineer it back into the software because they paid us the money for it. But we thought big. We went in and did some of this stuff. HP, we did a load of work with HP. I remember sitting near Sydney Opera House for the Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and they had their entire board there. So I went to see them in the morning. I was on holiday. I went to see them in the morning, and then they said, can you come back in the afternoon? It was their main board of the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and they were asking my advice on their cyber security strategy. And I'm just sat there going, this is just balmy, absolutely balmy. But we built a cyber security assessment tool. Ministry of Defence. This one is particularly, thinking big. It wasn't me who got us in there. It was lots of other people, and there's a few people here who can take credit for that. But all of the UK's military capability was modelled in this software that we built, this Mood software. And to give you an idea of what that is, without going into too much detail, say, for example, they were carrying out operating in a theatre in, say, Syria. In order to make that work, you have to put communications from northward, might get bounced from Akrotiri in Cyprus. They might launch a drone off an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Mediterranean. They then have an aircraft could go in and do the actual mission itself. They'll have cyber security stuff going in, cyber threats where they do a cyber attack and human intelligence coming back. All of those different elements of the military machine were modelled in Mood and how they interoperated, both at the system level and at sort of the hardware level. And that was an example of some of the stuff that we did in the military space. Again, thinking big. And it did mean that we had to some of the stuff we did was absolutely amazing. That higher purpose of keeping the UK safe. I went to the party on the Mall for the Queen's 90th birthday. That's the Dorchester, the chef's kitchen. So we went in and did a meal in there. Even now I feel physically sick. Even the tip on the bill was enough to make me physically sick. It was that expensive. And that glass at the back was one of those ones where you press a little button and it goes all smoky. But anyway, but we did some absolutely fantastic stuff. I think the big point on there is we did it through high-performing teams. We did a lot of stuff in the commercial world. Jaguar Land Rover, there's Matt Bosson, some of you may know him. We worked with them. We did this team over here. We did all sorts of stuff with the military. And we also did a lot of stuff with the security services, which is the Scooby-Doo stuff that we're not allowed to talk about. But the main thing we learned was persistence. If there is a superpower that is hugely underrated, it's persistence. Yeah? It's not one anyone talks about, but if you can keep going and just relentlessly batter an outcome, you will get to it. You will get there eventually. Even if you haven't got the software, even if you haven't got everything in the kit bag, you'll make it work, you'll fill in the gaps. And that persistence bit will get you through. And the second one I would say in there is the perspiration versus inspiration bit. How much is hard work and how much is novel ideas? You do need both. But the big thing in here, I think, for Tech York is the pivoting. We started out as a enterprise architecture tool. I can tell you what that is later. Then we did business modeling. Then we did cybersecurity. Then we did project management. Then we did capability management and the mod. We pivoted, constantly pivoted. And eventually, and I think it's because I was the last man standing, I was the only one left, as CEO, we sold the business to CACI, and it's now still going and it's getting replatformed, and it was absolutely fantastic. But the other bit I would take out of here is about working with teams. I've mentioned team spirit and camaraderie, but not just internally within your company. We did lots of stuff. That's the Royal Navy snowboarding team. Try not to titter at the back. But they do have a snowboarding team, and we sponsored them. That's the REME, the Royal Electrical Mechanical Engineers Nordic skiing, and I went with them in Norway and did some Nordic skiing. I did cross-country running across the Wiltshire Plains, all sorts of different stuff. But we built teams with our customer. They weren't just teams internally. We used to have a phrase, going native, where you would be so ingrained into the teams that you're working with that they just thought you were part of the gang. And as a result, they'd tell you stuff, you'd win the next piece of work, they'd give you a bit of an intel, and they would help you win the next work. And I think that was a massive, massive win. And of course, the software was great. Also, team jollies. We used to have a, it was called Immingham or Ibiza. So if you hit your target, you got to go Ibiza. We only went once, but it was good, which is that picture in the top right. And then, well, when you didn't, excuse me, when you didn't hit your target, you went to Immingham. Now, we found out that there isn't anywhere to stay in Immingham, so we went to Grimsby. But we had just a good time in Grimsby, it has to be said, than we did in Ibiza. But that was the formative years. I then, oh yeah, that's the other one. Who in the room has read this book? Excellent. I really do advise you have a read of this. It's absolute gold. If you're trying to understand how teams work, understand who's got the skills that you don't, how to put blended teams together that can actually carry out and deliver great outcomes, that book is great. It's like Myers-Briggs for idiots, really. It's really dumbed down, but it's got some really good examples in there. And essentially, the gist of it is that you got reds. I'm very red, very driven, very outcome focused, can often leave carnage behind them. Somebody once said to me, you have loads of ideas, Jim, and one or two of them are good ones. So I need people around me who say, is it a good idea, who qualify, as opposed to just chasing after the next thing, which I tend to do. You've got your yellows, very sociable. I'm very sociable, like going out. They tend to work in customer experience and sort of customer service environments. You've got your greens, very caring, very empathetic, often work in the, might work in the NHS, but that is the most common one, and you'll find lots of those in your teams. And then also you've got your blues. They sometimes call them cold blues, but this is your introverted, your finance person, like spreadsheets, like data, like everything to be accurate. So all I would say on that is, surrounded by idiots, have a read of it. It's very, very digestible, and I would say if I was to pick one book that I've ever read, management book, that's sort of given you an edge, that would be it. So, spinning onwards, do you remember the guy who had the paper round and went on the milk? That was Greg Jackson, who is the CEO and founder of Octopus Energy. So he was the guy, lived in my town, me and him were in the same class at school, so I would be forever the underachiever. And basically, he has now set up the biggest energy company in the UK. We've surpassed Centrica, and it's worth, the last valuation round that we took investments at, it was worth £10 billion. What's interesting is we've got a great bit of kit, which I'll bore you with in a minute, called Kraken software. That's just being spun out, and they expect the valuation of the Kraken software to be 10 billion on its own. So, growing like stink, they call it a decacorn, call it we will, or a clean energy disruptor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and encapsulate in 4 slides what the secret sauce is of Octopus, so that you guys can see what you can take away for your own businesses. We're actually a tech business. We happen to be an energy, but we're a tech business. The reason we've done so well is smart software. Yeah. The other thing is, because we've got the smart software, we attract a lot of smart people. And when you've got smart tech and smart people together, absolutely invincible. So, good example. That picture there with the solar panels on the roof and the heat pump, which is called a cozy heat pump, and a battery on the side. The UK grid, they need to spend billions on making it work to be able to take on renewables. And the reason why they need to do that is because previously you used to have power stations with pylons that went to your house. Now you've got thousands of generation assets. Onshore wind, offshore wind, solar arrays. And importantly, we're trying to get people to think about the house, instead of being an energy sink, so it utilizes energy, it's actually a producing asset. And to be able to unleash the value from that technology, that grid, you have to have a really, really smart bit of kit. And so they built Kraken. They built their own CRM system. So even though we built their own CRM system for BAS way back when, and these days people would just laugh at you if you decided that was, they decided to build their own Kraken CRM, geared specifically for energy. It does all the customer service stuff. How many Octopus customers we got in the room? Fantastic, about half, which is tremendous, well done. And when you ring up the customer service team, it's Kraken that they're using. It's AI-enabled answers, all that lovely good stuff. It's got all natively, but it's specifically for energy, and as a result, it kind of enables us to deliver world-class customer service, or outrageously good customer service, which is what set us apart. The other bit is because we've got smart tariffs and the smart tech. But the big thing that they've done is they think differently. It's difficult to describe what Greg's like, but he makes me look like a pedestrian. He's like this mercurial beast that just runs at 1,000 miles an hour. But he's also got that blue-brained. I went to Leeds, he went to Cambridge. That's probably all you need to know. But he can do both. He's red-blue. So he has really good ideas, and he checks whether they work, and he knows how to make them work. Yeah? Whereas I just have the good ideas, but whether they're good or not, who knows? But I'll give you an example. Octopus Fan Club. So there's a lot of people who don't want a wind turbine near their house. So whenever anybody says, do you want a wind turbine, everyone gets together, puts together a petition, and basically fights it. Right? And that's how it's been, NIMBYism. It's been like that forever. So Octopus said, how can we turn that round? So what they did was they said, in Market Wheaton, there's a massive wind turbine. If you live near that wind turbine, if it's spinning slowly, your bill is reduced by 20%. That's everyone who's an Octopus customer that is near Market Wheaton. And if it's spinning quickly, you get 50% off your bills. And in the cost of living crisis, we wrote to loads of councils and said, would you like your constituents to have 50% off their energy bills? And loads of councils wrote back and said, yes, we would. And all of a sudden, they're up for wind turbines. Conversations turned. Now, at that point, it'd be home for tea and medals. I'd be done then. But they didn't rest on the laurels there. They then wrote to all the landowners around the country and said, have you ever thought about putting a wind turbine on your farm or a piece of land, but you don't want to spend the 150 grand on the planning and it's all a bit tricky? We'll do that for you. Are you up for it? And then we created a little database where the people who'd said our constituents want the wind, their bills reduced, matched the farmers who were putting them in. Jobs are good, and all of a sudden you've got onshore wind and everybody wants it. Good example. Another good example is zero bills homes. If you buy a new build house and you put in a heat pump, you put in lots of solar on the roof and a battery, we guarantee that house has no bills for 10 years. So you have no bills at all for 10 years. So somebody in Octopus sat down in a room and had a little brainstorm to say, how can we build a house where they'll never be our customer? Because they'll never buy any energy. Just think about that for a minute. British Gas aren't going to do that. Yeah, because they just aren't. PLC listed company, need to turn a profit. But somebody worked that out, and that's what we did. And then the version beyond that is called tenant power. Tenant power is in retrofit, which is houses that are already built, social housing. If you put in a heat pump and you put the solar on the roof and you put in the battery, it generates about £1,000 a year. And what the council does is, because the way we do it is Kraken, smart, loads up the battery with cheap energy overnight. It then looks at what the price is every 30 minutes, and it also looks at the weather patterns and what the spot price is on the market and works out the optimum time to discharge that battery to be able to get the money in, and it creates about £1,000 a year. And what we'd say to is, the council, you can give a portion of that to your tenant. It could be all of it if you wanted to get into no bills, but what they tend to do is they give 30%, say, to the tenant, so they get 30% off their bills, and 70% they keep and they use it to carry on refurbishing and upgrading the houses. So social justice as well as fixing the climate crisis. All enabled through smart tech. And it's not because the other companies don't want to do this stuff. They can't do it because they haven't got the smart tech, because we've got Kraken. Last one from me is me kissing a cozy heat pump. They sat me down 8 months into the job and said, if you could design a heat pump, what would you have it do? And I thought it was like a theoretical exercise. And I said, well, I don't want it to look like an industrial aircon unit. Yeah, it's got to be really robust. It's got to have a tight footprint. It's got to be quiet. It's got to fire the cold air up into the sky so it doesn't make a frosted path in the winter. It's got to be high temperature, so you don't have to change your radiators when you put it in. You can run it like a gas boiler straight in at 65 degrees, yada, yada, yada. They bought a company in Northern Ireland. Didn't tell me that's very Octopus. Didn't tell me until after I bought it. And then we went across and tooled up to build the Cozy unit, which has got all these things built in. So seeding markets, seeding investment, which brings me on to, the mission-driven culture. That's probably the big, if there's only one thing you take away from tonight, it's the mission-driven culture bit. The way to get a high-performing team is to have that higher purpose. We have got green blood running through our veins. We get the smartest graduates coming into the business, working in our centres, and they are fighting climate change with every telephone call that they answer. Yeah, and it just exudes itself throughout the entire organisation from bottom to top. We often make decisions where we don't make any profit, but it's the right thing to do for the planet. The heat pump business, for example, still hasn't turned a profit. Yeah. And it's unlikely to for a considerable period of time, but we've seeded that market and we believe in it to decarbonise home heating so you haven't got any CO2 emissions from gas. That higher purpose, I can't explain. Mood was good because we had the sort of the mod UK PLC message, but the climate crisis one, particularly for Gen Zers, which is the people that you're attracting, they will walk over hot coals to work for Octopus, and they will go the extra yard to make stuff happen. We're nearly done. So the second one is funding and branding. So I've mentioned the mission, the tech, the innovation, funding and branding. Let's do funding first. So we've got all sorts of things in our kit bag. We've got the largest EV charging network in the world. We're also the biggest EV car. I don't know if you've seen the 3P thing that's come out today, but there you go. We've got the biggest EV car. We run the most EV car schemes across companies, so we're the biggest buyer of EV cars in the UK. We do all this home energy stuff. See the Cozy heat pump, there's the solar panels on the roof. We do batteries, we do EV chargers. There's all sorts of stuff in the kit bag that means we are a gilt-edge ethical investment. And that ability for the magic money tree to continually flow money into the business is the other secret sauce. So we have got investors queuing up who want to put money in because it is a gilt-edge ethical investment. There's no better ethical investment that's out there. And to put that into context, so we're fighting climate change. We're now doing a lot of stuff around social justice with the tenant power piece. We've got a £40 million assist fund. We didn't shout about it because it was politically, sensitive. You know when they pulled the winter fuel payment? If you rang up Octopus and said, can I have a winter fuel payment, we paid it. So we basically, a lot of our customers still got the winter fuel payment through us. We just paid for it out of a £40 million fund that we pulled together. 50,000 electric blankets we've dished out. Yeah, heat the human, not the home, to look after people. We have social workers working in every one of our centres who help people navigate the benefit system when they can't pay the bills. We help them navigate through to make sure they're getting the right bills. And then we do a pound match scheme. For every pound they pay, we knock a pound off their bill that they owe us. Yeah? So very, very strong ethical business. And to put that in, Al Gore, do you remember him? Pivoted his way into sort of the whole ethical investment world. He runs a hedge fund now. They're big backers of us. But the one that really calls out for me is the Canadian Pension Plan Fund. They've got £311 billion under investment from teachers and public sector workers in Canada. They had a vote that said, we only want our money to be ethically invested. Yeah? And so as a result of which, Octopus made the cut, and so they put a lot of money in. So there is a magic money tree that keeps flowing into Octopus. The second one is the branding. You've probably seen the branding. It's very pink, it's very bold, it's in your face. It is very, very memorable. Every customer, when they sign up, will get a bit of kit from us. We put the branding in. But we've still only got a marketing budget that is about 25% of a similar company. of our size. A lot of it's online, a lot of it's word of mouth because the customer service is good. Now, to be clear, the customer service bar in the energy world is quite low, yeah? So the fact that we're the best, yeah? But our net promoter score is 32 points better than our nearest rival. And I don't know if you know about net promoter score. It's a nightmare. You only get a score if you get 8, 9, or 10. It's really hard to get it. And in the energy world, it's really tough. So I think funding and branding is definitely a big, big piece of the jigsaw. And for those who are going to get a free, have a look at that. I don't know what the bloke or the lady on the third from the end is going with the 1,025. I looked at it, and I realised it's actually just clickbait. So you go in and see what else they've got for sale on their eBay site, because you can't get £1,000. But these things have got real resale value. So there you go. So you're currently sat on 25 quid there by the looks of it with your large octopus. But there is a whole resale thing. We're nearly there. I'm going to go back to vibe again. It is a word we use all the time in Octopus. Let's have a look. That's the Brighton office. They've got a full Brighton pier that basically you walk through to get into the office. All the offices have things like these plushie pools, we call them, where you can go and get your socials taken. You can lie in the plushies. They always have reminders of what we do. There's EV cars scattered about the buildings. That thing there is a coffee machine, one of those little sort of pop-up gourmet coffee machine type vibes, one of those. There's a juice bar in Brighton. Oh, by the way, I was going to use my Brighton team. I had 200 people in Brighton made me this hat, which I particularly like. They gave me this. There's a juice bar in Brighton, but all your food at Octopus is completely free. So you can go in, there's a full breakfast bar. There's then lunch, and the lunch is all from Waitrose and, M&S type stuff, couscous and all this sort of stuff. I'm not making this up. Two things worth noting. One, I had somebody in my Brighton team who identified as a cat. Ears, tail. She could sell, so I didn't give a shit. I thought, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to absolutely go with this. Right up until the point where in a meeting, they spat on a colleague's hands and started grooming. So unfortunately, out the door they went. But, so it's free food. And a lot of people box up a meal at night. So they go into the kitchen, box up a meal and take it home. You don't have to buy any food. I still can't get my head around it. And I see people getting like Five Guys ordered in, and all sat there eating Five Guys, and I'm sat eating what's in the kitchen. I'm thinking, what's the matter with you people? It must have cost you a fortune, and this stuff's free. Every office has got a slide, or a chute, as they say in Scotland. I'm not making it up. So in Brighton, if you want to go home, you can go to the first floor, and you shoot down the slide, and then you're out. You do with it what you will. Average age is 24. But, everywhere you look, in our Slough and Sheffield centres, we've got these houses, full-size houses built with all the kit in. We've got EV cars. We've got heat pumps all over the place. Everyone wears branded merch. You can't get so much branded merch, unbelievable, which all binds us all together. So they really do make that whole piece work because it's team as a product of environment and team communications. And on the team communications, every office has an auditorium. So you see that picture bottom on the right there? It's a big auditorium, probably takes about 250 people. And every Friday at 5:15, we have a thing called family dinner. Now, I know some of you have been to loads of these events. You sit there and go, yeah, it's great for a company that's worth 10 billion. It used to be in the pub. So literally, when they were smaller, they took everyone to the pub and did family dinner where Greg, as the chief executive, would talk about everything that's going on in the business. And we do it every single week, and it's real ritual stuff. And we talk about what's gone wrong as well as what's gone right. I picked this one the other day. We were at the COP Summit in Brazil. What else we got? There's some endearing influencer over there, Grandmother of Dragons over in Spain, who did a video with Octopus. The Octopus Energy Assist Fund, we're always making people aware of what that looks like. EV cars, how we've integrated AI, and it's not going to pinch your job. It just means you're going to be even more of a ninja at your job. All that sort of stuff we're talking about. And yes, that was Idris Elba. So Idris Elba's dad's from Sierra Leone. And the gambit for Africa is a lot of them, we're trying to get them to skip the whole fossil fuels phase. So basically, they haven't got any electricity, bin the fossil fuels and move straight to renewables. So Idris Elba is basically running he's an investor in it. He is running a program to get loads of wind turbines in, to get Sierra Leone onto a renewable network so the energy can change the lives of the people over there. And Greg's very approachable. He chats to people. If you go online, you'll find his email. He answers his own X. So if you go onto X, Twitter, he still answers it, which is absolutely balmy. Used to do my nut, because you'd get customers saying, yeah, Greg said. I'd be like, oh. But, still very, very accessible as a business. I just wanted to show you some of this, because I had to go through a whole, bearing in mind I used to work in, going to see the security services and the mod. This is celebrating success. This was last Thursday. That guy there with the strange purpley sparkly jacket is Bastian, who runs the German business, but that's them celebrating 1 million customers. But here's the example of what the communications look like. I've done a Chapel Roan themed team meeting. I've done Charlie XCX, you name it, anything to try and tune in. But it has to be short, brief, and there has to be shitloads going on. Right? I'll just show you one more example. In terms of communications, there you go. We were opening up an office in Manchester, and so that was what we used. And I kid you not, that is the level of communications in Octopus. You don't get bullet. You what? That's the actual slide, yeah. That's the actual slide. And so family dinner, that's what the slides will be like. And it takes a lot of getting your head around. The other one that took a bit of getting my head around is, you may have noticed that I wear a lot of shackets. You probably have never understood the concept of a shacket, but I've got a good shacket game. Shack attack, call it what you will. But Mike, when I joined Octopus, I had to go from wearing brown brogues and blazer and a shirt, basically, and sometimes a suit, to wearing shackets, trainers, and my kids took me out and they styled me. And all of the jackets, all of the clothes that they got me for the tops were shackets. I said, why is that? And they said, because they've got pockets on the front. I said, oh, that's really cool. It's to hide your moobs, Dad. So there you have it. But as a result, I had to completely change. I had to go from dealing with guys who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s who've come up through, the military career route, through to 24-year-olds who haven't. So, 2 slides to go. Rule of the 10. If you ring up one of our call centres, the team size is never more than 10. And whereas in every other business, they'll have a specialist team for electric vehicles, for heat pumps, for debt, for whatever it is, yeah, they'll have separate departments. We don't do that. We have a team of 10, and everybody has to be able to answer every single type of query that comes in. And trust me, there's a lot, but it's all AI enabled with, so you can go in and put in your things. You've got to be able to answer to a certain depth every single question, which means you never, ever, ever get passed to somebody else. And then you have specialists in each of those 10, in each of the areas, who you may get passed within the team, but it's a hot handover rather than a cold handover. You just say, you free, right, straight across. So the rule of the 10 is, and then as soon as you get to 10,000 customers, you set up a new 10. So we always grow with 10,000 customers, rule of the 10, everybody has to be able to answer a question. And the operating model is embedded into the Kraken software. And Greg thought it'd be a wizard wheeze, and everyone went, why are you doing this, Greg? We'll sell Kraken, the customer service software, to EDF and E.ON and anybody else who wants it. So we sold the software to our competitors so they can deliver better customer service. And everyone went, what? Why would you give away your secret sauce to somebody else? Why would you do that? And we're currently spinning the Kraken business out for 10 billion. That's why I did it, because it had 600 million of recurring revenue. Here's the one that I've saved the best till last. We don't have any HR department. There are no HR professionals in our business. There's 6,000 people, and we don't have any HR. I know Phil Walton's looking at me thinking, crikey, O'Reilly, you have 400 people working for you, Jim. He knows me of old. But I tell you what, if you know you have to mop a problem up, you don't let the problem happen. You nip it in the bud. Somebody joins and they're not going to make it. Ta-da. Yeah? Or if somebody's needs some special support and they're really good at what they do, you put the support package around them to make sure that they're going to be happy in their role. And if there's dissent and there's issues in the team, you tackle it. And here's another one. I've been there 4 years, probably generating revenues about 50 million quid. I've never had a finance meeting, ever. Never had a single finance meeting. Now, I've already said it's because we're massively well-funded, so what they say is, Jim, as long as you're growing like stink, yeah, just keep going. No HR, no finance. just close your eyes for a minute. It's a wonderful place. Seriously, it's a wonderful place. It does mean you have to deal with a load of stuff that you probably don't want to, like people who identify as a cat and spit on their colleagues. But, you know, you can sort it out. So no shackles, grow and bring the right team with you. So, what have we learned? I think, number one, trunks and a hat is always a good look. Number two, I think this bit here is steal with glee. Learn from the people around you. Surround yourself with people who have got the skills that you don't have. And you will get on. And I learned that very, very early. I think do what you love. You've got to try and find something that gets you out of bed in the morning, something that gives you that passion, that drive to get something over the line. I think it was Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park who said, nature will find a way. Your teams will find a way. Just ask them. Yeah, and if you've got a particularly intransient team, ask them to tell you what the blockers are, and then get the more positive ones to tell you how to fix them. Yeah, and I'll share the little brainstorming, 5-minute brainstorming thing. I'll send you a guide on how you can do some of that. I'll share that at the end. Remember why you're doing it. Yeah, you're a long time dead. We're all doing it. It's only work at the end of the day, and you've got to do it for a higher purpose, and there's no higher purpose than your family. Smart tech, smart people, and perseverance. That was the mood story. And then finally, if you somehow magically manage to pull all of those together, like Greg has managed to do, you might just have a £10 billion business. And what's next? Well, the answer is I'm still Octopus, thoroughly enjoying myself, but whatever I do, it won't be dull. And then last but not least, and I very nearly bought you a banana to write on, but I decided against it. It's still my favourite advert. So as a little hint and tip, next time you run in a team meeting and you're trying to get people engaged, buy bananas, give them a pen, and get them to write down what are the 3 things you've learned from today, or what are the 3 things you're going to do differently, and remind them that the banana will go off, so you have to do them before the banana goes off. And they all think, and they'll sat there writing on a banana and think you're a bit bonkers, but I tell you what, it works because they remember it. Do you remember we wrote those things down on the bananas, and they might actually remember what it was they wrote. So that's the hint and tip. So anyway, that's me. Thank you very much.